You pick up a stick. It is straight. It is heavy at one end. You have spent an hour shaving the bark away with a stone flake, balancing the weight by feel, sharpening the tip and fire to harden it. This is not a hobby. This is the difference between eating tonight and not eating at all. For most of human history, this was not a hypothetical. This was Tuesday. We tend to picture early humans as fumbling half-form, waiting around for someone to invent the wheel so real progress could begin. But the deeper archaeologists dig, the more that picture falls apart. Your ancestors were not waiting for civilization to hand them tools. They were already engineers. They were already chemists. They were already tailors. They just didn't write any of it down. So what did they actually build? And how far back does real deliberate invention go? Let's start with the spear you just imagined because it is older than almost anyone expects. In 1994, at a coal mine near the town of Schöningen in Germany, researchers led by archaeologist Hartmut Team uncovered something that should not have existed by the old timeline of human progress. Wooden spears, not sharpened sticks. Engineered weapons, roughly 2 meters long, with the weight deliberately shifted toward the front third, the same balance point a modern javelin uses to fly straight. These spears are about 300,000 years old. That predates our own species, Homo sapiens, as we currently define it. Whoever made them understood aerodynamics they could never have explained in words, but could clearly feel in their hands, Think about what that means. 300,000 years ago, someone tested, failed, adjusted, and tested again, refining a weapon until it flew true. And that is not luck, that is method. Now, jump forward to South Africa, to a cave called Blombos, perched above the Indian Ocean. In the early 2000s, archaeologist Christopher Henshalwood and his team found 2 abalone shells tucked into the sediment dated to around 100,000 years ago. Inside the shells, a reddish paste made by grinding ochre, a naturally pigmented rock, and mixing it with crushed bone, charcoal, and a binding liquid, probably fat or marrow. This was not random mess. This was a kit, a container, a recipe, and a tool for application, all stored together for later use. Henshalwood's team called it the earliest known evidence of a deliberately compounded substance. In plainer words, humans were running basic chemistry on purpose 100,000 years before anyone wrote the word chemistry down. Why does a paint kit matter as much as a spear? Because it shows planning that has nothing to do with survival. Pocker paste wasn't eaten and it wasn't thrown at predators. It was likely used on skin, on bodies, on meaning itself. Your ancestors weren't only solving the problem of staying alive, they were already solving the problem of being understood. And the ochre itself is a technology separate from the kit it ended up in. Raw ochre straight out of the ground is just a soft, crumbly rock. To turn it into something useful, you have to know which pieces to select, how to grind them against a harder stone without losing the pigment to dust, and what to mix in so the paste holds together, instead of flaking off skin or rock within minutes. Some of the ochre pieces found at sites like Blombos and nearby Classes River show grinding facets so consistent that researchers believe they were shaped specifically to fit a human hand. The same way a tool handle gets worn smooth with use, that is design thinking applied to a rock that to anyone without the knowledge would look like nothing more than dirt. There's a third invention that might be the most quietly extraordinary of all, and it's one you are almost certainly wearing a descendant of right now. Sewing. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologist Lynn Wadley and her colleagues uncovered bone tools dated to roughly 61,000 years ago that show where patterns consistent with piercing soft material, likely hide. And in 2016, researchers working in Denisova Cave in Siberia found something even more specific. A bone needle with a drilled eye, around 50,000 years old, nearly identical in concept to a steel needle you could buy today. Not a punch, not an awl, a needle built to pull thread through layered material and create a tailored fitted seam. A draped animal hide keeps you warm. A tailored sewn garment sealed at the seams keeps you alive at temperatures that would kill you in anything looser. That distinction is not small. Some researchers studying Ice Age population patterns have pointed to tailored clothing as one of the technologies that allowed humans to push into northern Siberia and eventually cross into the Americas territory that simple draped fur could never have made survivable. So picture an evening deep in an Ice Age winter. Outside cutting like a blade. Inside, near a fire-built load to conserve fuel, someone sits with a bone needle and a strip of sinew, pulling hide together at the shoulder seam of a garment meant for a child. The stitches are small and even spaced by feel more than by sight, because the firelight barely reaches the work in their lap. Across the fire, someone else grinds ochre into paste with a flat stone, mixing it carefully, eyeballing the ratio from memory, the same ratio their own teacher used years before. Outside, a third person checks the balance of a spear shaft by spinning it slowly in their palms, feeling for the place where the weight sits wrong, then shaving a few more strokes of bark away with a stone flake until the spin finally feels even. Children nearby watch all 3 tasks happen at once, absorbing the motions, long before anyone explains the reasoning behind them. None of these people think of themselves as inventors. They think of themselves as people getting through the night. But across thousands of years, repeated by thousands of people doing exactly this, it adds up to something we would now call a technology stack. Here's the twist most people never expect. The single most clever weapon in this entire two-cut isn't the spear at all. It's a separate, smaller tool that does almost nothing on its own, the spear thrower, sometimes called by its Aztec name, the atlatl. It looks unremarkable, just a stick about 2 feet long with a small hook or socket at one end. But it works as a lever, extending the effective length of your arm and multiplying the speed of the throw. The same principle behind a trebuchet or a ball thrower for a dog. With an atlatl, a spear that might travel 20 meters by hand can travel well past 40 and hit with dramatically more force. Researchers studying surviving hunter-gatherer groups in the 20th century, including work building on earlier observations by anthropologist Richard Lee, recorded just how much more lethal and efficient the simple add-on made hunting without changing a single thing about the spear itself. It is, in the truest sense, a machine. No gears, no metal, no moving parts beyond the human arm holding it. Just a precise understanding of leverage discovered and refined by people with no form of physics, no blueprints, and no guarantee anyone would remember who figured it out first. How does a person with no concept of physics arrive at a lever this efficient? Almost certainly the same way they arrived at the balanced spear, by throwing thousands of spears across thousands of days, noticing which throws felt effortless and which ones felt weak, and slowly shaping the tool around the motion that worked best. The atlatl essentially freezes the optimal flick of the wrist into a piece of wood, so that even a tired or inexperienced hunter can reproduce the throw of an expert. That is not a small trick. That is one human anchoring skill into an object, so the next person doesn't have to relearn it from nothing. And that's really the pattern underneath all of it. None of these inventions came from a single genius having a single eureka moment. The balanced spear, the chemistry kit, the sewn seam, the lever thrower, they were each refined, slowly, by trial, by failure, by someone noticing that one version worked slightly better than the last, then passing that improvement on. This is the same process that built the device you are watching this on right now. Different materials, different time scale, same basic human instinct. Notice the problem, test a fix, keep the fix that works, teach it to someone else. You probably haven't sharpened a spear shaft by firelight or ground ochre into paste with a flat stone, but you have absolutely done the smaller version of this. Adjusted a recipe until it finally tasted right. Found the one trick that made a stubborn task easier, and told a friend about it. Tweaked something small again and again, until it simply worked. That instinct did not start with you, and it did not start with industry or writing or even agriculture. It started in caves and riverbanks and firelit camps, tens and hundreds of thousands of years before anyone thought to call it innovation. So the next time you pick something up, really look at it. A pen, a kitchen knife, somewhere in its ancestry is a person deep in prehistory, turning a slightly worse version of it over in their hands, trying to make it slightly better. You pick up a stick, it is straight, it is heavy at one end, and somehow that simple deliberate act of getting it right is the same one, still running quietly behind almost everything you touch today.